pick out the 5 most important things that need to get done. Because if you're trying to do too many things, then nothing gets done well.
My name is Merrill Dubrow, CEO of Mark Research. I'm a 35-year veteran of the research and insights community and the host of our podcast, On the Mark. On the Mark is focusing on executives and thought leaders in the world, sharing their insights, strategies, and personal experiences. I promise this podcast will be filled with tough, pointed questions with real, insightful, and emotional answers. Today's guest is Camille Nicita, President and CEO of Gongos. Camille, welcome to the On the Mark podcast.
Hi, Merrill. My pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking me.
All right, so here we are, Camille. It's this. By the time this posts, this will be November of 2020. Let's start with something just a little bit different. You know, you and I have known each other for a long time. Give me one thing that I would be surprised to know about you, and the listeners would be as well.
Yeah, so that's somewhat of a tough question because I feel like I'm an open book, but I'll go with this. So my entire life, I have sort of resisted running. You know, so many people run for stress release or exercise or, weight maintenance, whatever it might be. And I've always been that person that's like, no way, I am never running. I have no idea why anyone would ever be crazy enough to do that. And 2 years ago, I took up the hobby of running.
Oh, wow.
And actually really, really love it. And in fact, during this pandemic that we've all been experiencing, I would say running is one of the things that has gotten me through. So thank God for running.
So when you say running, is it more, are you talking about you're working up to a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, a marathon? What are we talking?
Okay, well, let's not get crazy here. So I started with, and literally never ran before. So our company 2 years ago decided to do the Detroit Marathon Relay. So we created like 6 teams of 5 people. Each person on the team took a segment of the relay. And I wanted to be able to participate in it. So I started by running a half mile and then a mile and worked myself up to, I'll run what's the equivalent of a 5K 3 to 4 times a week now. And that's all I aspire to do. I don't want to do anything crazy like run a half marathon or a marathon. I'm old. It's hard on your hips. It's hard on your knees. So 5K 3 to 4 times a week is exactly what I need. And I'm proud of working myself up to that.
All right. But Camille, if I heard what you said right, and I'm a numbers person. So you said it's a relay team of 5 people, right?
Uh-huh.
And a marathon is 26 miles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that means the average person runs over 5 miles. Now, I know a 5K is only 3.1 miles. You're not holding up your end of the bargain on that. Did I do that right, Camille?
So it's broken up into different segments with mileage, associated with it. Okay. And like you said, an average person. Now, I'm not average, Merrill. So you are correct in the fact that I did not do the average. I did 3 miles.
Okay. All right. It's funny. I have done a couple of 5Ks and I've run one 10K and I would never do it. And I do run and work out a fair amount. And it's interesting. So you brought up running and you brought up the pandemic. So I like to ask people this. Where do you do your best thinking? So you've got challenges in front of you. And for me, it's actually 3 spots. It's driving, it's the shower, and it's actually running. Mm-hmm. So has running changed you? Do you kind of veg out? Are you listening to a podcast? Are you listening to my podcast? Are you listening to music? Or are you just thinking about the business in your life and the pandemic when you're running?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that running does create clarity for sure. And it varies. There are some days where I run to music because I just don't feel like thinking about anything. So it's a great escape. I run always in the morning. Rarely is it after work or, later in the day. So with the mornings getting darker and everything else, sometimes I will be literally running in the dark with a headlight or something on, of course. But, the ability to run in the dark and to gain clarity before you even start work in the morning is a time where I do a lot of my best thinking. I'll come back from those runs and be like, okay, here's 3 to 5 new ideas or, 3 to 5 new things I need to talk to people about today or whatever it might be. But the ability to just 45 minutes or 35 minutes at the beginning of a day to gain that clarity for the rest of your day and the energy associated with running. I honestly am so sad that I didn't find this as a form of, escapism earlier in my life.
That's great. All right, so let's get to business for a second. Let's start with Gongos. So for some of the listeners, they may not be familiar, as familiar as I am with Gongos, which is a terrific company based in, I believe, Royal Oak, Michigan. Talk a little bit about Gongos, maybe a 45-second commercial about the company and some of the takeaways that you'd like to leave the listeners with.
So Gongos, our tagline is we make customer centricity happen. And what we mean by that is we help our clients, mostly Fortune 500 companies and industry leaders, do sort of a two-pronged thing, which is both deeply understand their customers as well as take that understanding and create action or implementation with that understanding. We came up with this idea of making customer centricity happen as the tagline. We did it really purposefully because we truly believe that customer centricity happens in that intersection of understanding and action, right? There's so many companies, even in our industry, that go out and data collect or help gain understanding, but they can't help their clients put that into play. Or you've got, companies, client side, that try to act without customer understanding, and we've all seen that fall short. So we really bring those two things together to create the magic, right? Customer centricity lives with both understanding and being able to take that understanding and be successful in the marketplace with it.
The interesting thing is this your only job?
Well, besides like selling cards at Hallmark.
No. Or delivering newspapers or shoveling. You probably did what I did when you were a youngster, when you were a teen, and shoveled driveways and all that stuff. But this is your only job. You're old school, right?
I started at Gongos while I was still in college. I was a college intern for John Gongos, actually at a company that he was at prior to Gongos. And when he decided to leave that company and start his own business, he asked if I would want to join. And I was 20 years old at the time, no kids, no spouse, nothing to hold me down. So it's like, why not be part of a startup, right? For people then. And
wow.
Yeah, it's one of the pride points, I would say, of my career, to be able to stick with something for that long and literally see it go from, a seed in someone's brain to a successful company that we are today.
It's interesting because lots of people, so Mark's been around since 1965, but I'm still a baby at the company. I've only been on board about 16 years. And, the thing about it is, the company Gongos has matured over those years, those 30 years, and you've matured over 30 years. I mean, think of you as a 20-year-old or even as an intern coming in and the person and the professional and what I would call it, the guru that you are now. I mean, you both grew up hand in hand at the company. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a journey, that's for sure. I think it's an oddity, right, in today's day and age to meet somebody that's been with the same place for almost 30 years. And you could back away from that and be somewhat like, oh, I've been at the same place 30 years. I consider it a huge accomplishment and a pride point. Like I said, I found something that I loved and I've been able to shape it and contribute to it and, put my own imprint on something. I don't know that a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that, and that's really, really cool. So let's go back. Let's go back to 2019. Let's go back to what's probably October, November of 2019, where you're meeting with your executive leadership team. My gut is you're talking about strategy, you're talking about goals, you're talking about new products, services, servicing clients maybe a little bit different in 2020. And you set your goals and you set your forecasts and what you guys want to accomplish. And then bam, 60, 70 days into the new year, the pandemic hits. How did those goals change? And how did you start to navigate through that?
Well, first you have the sort of, oh shit moment, right? We spent all this time thinking and planning, and we have a pretty rigorous strategic planning process at Gongos. And then the pandemic hits and you have to, stand back and say, okay, what of this can we still move forward with, or should we still move forward with? And what of it needs to, be put on the back burner to revisit later, or maybe never, depending on how things change. But at the beginning of every year, like most companies, we set our forecast, our revenue forecast, and our margin forecast. But then we also set some strategic goals on how we want to actually grow and advance either our capabilities or our people or our culture. And I guess I'm really happy to say that most of those goals, while we didn't hit our revenue forecast for the year, the other strategic goals that we had in place that are more longer term focused, helping us to take the steps that we need to reach, the vision that we have, all of those stayed intact, but we broke them down to be much smaller steps for the year. We sort of went from quarterly planning. So we do an annual planning session and then we break things down into quarterly goals. So for the first quarter, our goals remained exactly as we planned them to be because the pandemic didn't really hit us until the end of the first quarter. But then starting in quarter two, we planned in 45-day increments. So we really took things at like just shorter bursts and set things out there that we knew we could get accomplished in 45 days. And then we came back together and then we planned the second half of quarter two, the next 45 days. And we did that for all of quarter two and for the first part of quarter three, just to keep ourselves sane and make sure also that what we were planning to do was actually still sort of kosher with what was going on in the environment. Because I think, like everybody, the environment was changing faster than anything we'd ever seen before. And we wanted to make sure that our strategy and our plans were still keeping pace with our client needs, our employee needs, and all of that good stuff. There's plans in place that we kept marching to, but there are all kinds of other things that came into play that we didn't expect, like keeping employees remote for the foreseeable future. How does that affect your plans for culture and the organization's health? But I think the other thing we did this year that we do every year, but we did it hyper focused attention and frequency this year is co-creating with our clients and just really talking to our clients more. And they were available to talk more. They weren't on planes. They weren't flying to research locations or conferences. Our clients were available to us. So if we had a new idea or we wanted to try something out or we wanted to find out how they were doing, they were willing and available to pick up the phone this year like never before. And I think we really innovated in 2020, probably more so than we would have had the pandemic not existed, because we really had the time to listen to and plan against true client and employee needs and co-create the future with them.
There's some really nice takeaways from there. One of them, I want to have a follow-up question on the goal settings. It's now 45 days, or at least in Q2 and Q3. You can have goals, and the easy one is I can have revenue goals, but you can also have proposal goals. You can also have profitability goals. You can also have, hey, I want to launch 2 new products or 2 services or something like that. So how many goals on a typical quarter or 45 days, Camille? Obviously, revenue is the obvious one that would make the list. But in addition to that, did you have it by product line? Did you have it by service? And what were some of the other goals that you guys set?
Yeah. So like you said, revenue is the obvious one. So that's always there. And then we limit ourselves to no more than 5 goals per quarter. You feel like 5 goals in a quarter, because it's typically 90 days, right? That you have to accomplish it. Pick out the 5 most important things that need to get done. Because if you're trying to do too many things, then nothing gets done well, right? So really zero in, focus on those 5 things. And those 5 things are usually a combination of people, our own people. So it could be development of people or, training, that type of thing, clients, and new capabilities or processes. So those things sort of come together as goals for the quarter. And it might be where one quarter, it's more focused on new product offerings. It could be a different quarter where we have a new product offering and we're ready to go to market with it. So how do we get our marketing and sales strategy together to make sure we're making the most of that product offering? But it's rarely where all 5 goals are focused solely on sales or marketing or product. Almost always there's something related to employees or the community or culture that are mixed in there, so that we keep a really nice mix between sort of employee experience and client experience.
And I know culture is very important to you and your leadership team. We've talked about this, but How do you keep that intact? How are you guys navigating through that, Camille, with the pandemic, with everybody working out of their house?
Oh, such a great question. And it's taken a lot of really concerted effort and focus and just talking about it all the time. Because like you said, it is something that is so important to us. We see it as a differentiator, in our hiring process. And I think our clients see it as a differentiator for working with Gongos. So in terms of keeping it intact during this pandemic, as soon as we realized that we were going to be working from home for, the foreseeable future, we started to put things in place. For instance, we have always had a monthly all company meeting. Well, now we have a what we call Friday FaceTime. Every single Friday for a half hour, it's an all company meeting, and we talk about everything from personal stuff to how the business is doing, and we're super transparent about the financials of the business and new clients and things like that. The leadership team sort of divided up our people and had check-ins with every single person in the company just to see how people are doing, make sure that we're checking in personally and professionally. We had book clubs, we had, just all kinds of things, hobby clubs, cooking clubs, just things to get people where, you would normally have that water cooler talk or see somebody in the hallway and stop them and say, hey, I did this on Friday and it was really cool. We tried to simulate similar experiences like that in a virtual environment. Did we get it all right? We did not, and it's still something that's super top of mind, because I think as much as people love remote working, and I'll be honest, going back to the office, even for me, thinking about doing that 5 days a week, I can't imagine going back to the office 5 days a week. There's definite benefits of working remotely. But you also have to balance that against the long-term effects of organizational health and the camaraderie and collaboration and the things that just are so much more difficult to take place in a virtual environment.
Yeah, it's interesting. You have your Friday town hall. We have our Monday town hall at 10:30. I do it for 20 minutes. You do it for 30 minutes. You always have to exceed me, don't you? I'm going to make mine 31 minutes on starting Monday.
I'll make mine 32.
Yeah, exactly. But that's interesting, right? Because unless you're in the chair, unless you're a CEO, you don't know what CEOs go through. It's an emotional roller coaster. My dad taught me many things, Camille. One is how to be really stoic, whether good or bad. I won't get into it, but I tend to be very, very stoic. I mean, I remember when my dog died years and years and years and years ago, and nobody could tell, right? I remember somebody saying something about me 2 days after my dad passed away, and they could never tell that I had just this huge burden and this huge loss. So it's hard, but how have you been able to personally deal with the ups and downs of the pandemic and trying to navigate just the health and well-being, not just of your family, but the family, your extended family, what I would suggest is, which is everybody at Gongos. And how hard has that been on you?
It's been tough. I mean, I will say in the 30 years that I've been at this, that this is definitely the toughest time as a leader. And think about it. It's not as if we haven't faced tough times. We've gone through 9/11, we went through the 2809 recession, and for Gongos, we went through the loss of John Gongos, right? That was 8 years ago. That was really tough to get through. But I can say that this has been the most difficult. And I think it's sheerly because of the ambiguity that this situation creates, right? Like you and I have talked about this. If somebody could give us a date that this is all going to be over by December 2021, you could start to plan towards that. Well, nobody can tell you that. So as a leader, then, you're expected to have vision, you're expected to have direction and to be able to tell people exactly what's going to happen and this is what we're going to do. And I think one of the things that I've realized through all of this is the only thing that's constant is change, which, I think we all knew that before, but that's such a truism in this environment. So then you have to fall upon like, okay, so if you know that it's change is just going to be with you now and always, right? Right now, we're going through severe change, but change has always been there. So you've got to find for yourself what are the 3 to 5 key sort of principles that you want to lean into that you can stand down as sort of your foundation, no matter how much change exists, right? And I really leaned into that during this pandemic and tried to figure out, like, what are those for me? And one of those for me is just being super authentic. I think somebody asked me in an interview once, like, what's your leadership superpower? And I think for me, that's authenticity. You talk about being stoic. When I face the company, not only am I transparent, but super authentic. It's like what you see is what you get with me. I'm going to be the authentic Camille, whether I'm talking to my daughter or whether I'm talking to, our CFO at the company. I don't think there's any reason to hide behind emotions or what you're feeling. Obviously, you want to give people a sense of hope and purpose and confidence. But at the same time, I think this pandemic has taught us all to be human with one another and to show our true selves, because we're all in this together, right? The only way this is all going to get better is if we come together and help each other. And I think even our industry, we've seen leaders of competitive organizations coming together to talk about, like, how do we all get through this together? How do we make sure that the rising tide lifts all boats, right? There's such an opportunity for our industry to come out of this stronger and for all of us to fare better. But we're going to do that by banding together and being authentic and sharing our problems, our challenges, our opportunities with one another. And I have such a strong belief in that, whether, like I said, doesn't matter who I'm interacting with, that's just who I am.
Well, who you are is very, very special. I can assure you that John is looking down and has a huge smile on his face and knows that the company that bears his name, his family's name, is in good hands. Is there anything you would like to say to him? Just in closing, I know what he meant to you and I know how much he taught you and how proud he is of you. Is there anything you want to say?
What would I say to John Gongos? I think I would say thank you. Honestly, I mean, he dropped such a gift in my lap. Really, when I think about, he was such a great mentor, a friend, and role model to me. But the gift that he gave was, this company. It's been such an honor to be able to take this company and see its potential, when he passed away, and be leading it for the better half of the last decade, right? And it wouldn't have happened if he didn't set the right foundation with an amazing culture. I'm so grateful for that, to be given the opportunity to lead this company with his name on it.
Well, listen, Camille, without question, you are amazing. I know you describe yourself as authentic, as your superpower. I can't thank you enough for your time today. I know John is looking down and he is so proud of you. And thanks again for listening to the On the Mark podcast. My name is Merrill Dubrow. Camille and everyone, have a great day.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.